Hi, everybody. Okay. So yeah, the title of my talk is Will Grandma Care? And this actually came out of a conversation I had with Sasha about potentially coming here to speak and some things that I was excited about and some things that I was working on at the time. And since then, it's actually really kind of come together a lot better for me, and hopefully you all appreciate it. Empathy is something that we talk about a lot. So first, just a little bit about myself. I won't even try to get the pronunciation right or the accent right. I feel very self-conscious about that right now. So I'm Clay Delk. I'm a content strategist at Facebook. I'm one of about 25 of us, which is a crazy luxury that most people don't get to enjoy. I get to work with 24 of the best in the country at what we do. We work on a variety of things throughout the company. We actually are one of the smallest teams of specialists like this, but we cover probably the broadest spectrum of things in the company. We have content strategists that work on everything from newsfeed to internet.org to pages and ads, which is what I work on, as we said before. What I focus on specifically are the interfaces that people actually use to create ads, and the interfaces especially they use to find their audience, which is something that obviously is very personal for both the advertiser, but also for all of us on Facebook who are the audiences. So it's something that I focus on trying to humanize that as much as I can and make sure people remember that they're showing these things to real people. And that's really what I want to get into today. So the topic of this talk essentially came from this poster. This poster is about just a few feet from my desk. And if you don't know the poster culture at Facebook, we actually have this thing called the Analog Research Lab, which is great for one of the biggest tech companies to have. It's essentially just a workshop with screen printing and a print press and all these amazing like hand tools. There's actually a wood shop there now that you can go in and build stuff. And as part of our team building and part of our culture building, teams can go in and print these posters that they design and make up. And this one is from our content operations team, which is actually the team that does the support content for everything on Facebook. So if you go to the Help Center for anything, they're the team that creates that. And so it says, will grandma understand it? And then underneath it, it says content operations, your Help Center writers. And the good thing about this is that it helps the team have a fun exercise to do together and kind of do some hoorah team building stuff, but it also helps you get your message out to the rest of the company, which is, we have several thousand people on our campus. Most of them are engineers and developers who would never really think to care about this and think that it even matters. They're the guys that end up writing error messages without showing them to us. And so there's some things that we really want to make sure we're communicating with this. And of course, the grandma is kind of your standard stand-in for the basic user. I'll get to that in a minute. But ultimately, what this is about, it's about usability. It's about content usability. Are we writing things in a way that people can understand them, that people can do what they want to do with them? And we use the grandma character, and I say we as an industry, not as Facebook. As an industry, we use this grandma character as a person to stand in for that novice user, because, geez, if my grandma could understand it, anyone could. But honestly, the more I think about this character, this usability meme, if there is such a thing, the more I'm bothered by it. So the grandma stands in for that basic user who doesn't really understand how the internet works or how this thing works or which button to click or whatever. And I started asking myself, is this really who we're building things for? Is this really who we should be focusing on? And I don't mean will grandmas use our products, because grandmas use our product all the time. Grandmas actually use most of your products all the time. And I'm not even saying, should we be building this for novice users or for basic users or for new users? What I'm really saying is this a real example of that kind of person? And personally, to me, this grandma is bullshit. I actually can't stand this meme and this whole process of basically stereotyping age and gender and experience and all of these things into one image. And it actually started to bother me. I love that poster. I love what that poster stands for and what that poster means, but I hate this part of it. And so I really wanted to talk about that to start out today. And so I'm saying this is not grandma. this is actually grandma. That's mine and my mom. And an amazing selfie that they just took a few days ago at the beach together. And so, yes, my grandmother doesn't use the internet, doesn't use Facebook, didn't know what Facebook was, actually. When I got hired and called her, she told me how proud she was of me, even though she had no idea what I was working on or what I was doing, but it sounded really important, and I think that's great. At the same time, she uses lots of other things. She uses a phone. She uses her microwave. She will probably use the smart refrigerator when we finally build the refrigerator that goes on the internet. There's all of these things that she will use, so she's a real person. This is actually 2 grandmas, though. My mom is a grandmother. She's a Nana, actually, is her name. And so, she's another usability example. Sure, she struggles a little bit with things on the computer. She has an iPad that she loves. She has my old iPhone that I gave her that she likes. And she can use that for the most part, even though it's sketchy at best at this point. She does struggle with things, and I do have to help her sometimes with the way things work. She also has 40 years of retail management experience and design experience. And when I worked for an e-commerce platform before I went to Facebook, I called her and asked for her advice on things that I was working on for supposedly advanced users. So, this is a real grandma. This is a real person that we should really be thinking about. This is also a grandmother, or at least she will be in a few months. And she's using her phone while at work. This is also a grandmother. Tried to find a picture of Sarah Palin using a computer, could not find one, for the record. Not saying anything, not judging, just saying didn't exist. This is also a grandmother, because step-grandmothers are also grandmothers. And she's using a tablet at work. So these are all real examples, real people, varying levels of experience and possibly intelligence. And then lastly, this is a grandmother. This is actually a fake grandmother. This is a cartoon grandmother. But it's a very different cartoon grandmother than the one we saw in that first poster. This is Carol. She is an incredibly useful persona from a new book that's out from Whitney Quisenberry and Sarah Horton, called A Web for Everyone. And it's a book really about accessibility and usability for people with disabilities. But ultimately, it really struck me how much the needs of this character, of Carol, were real, legitimate versions of the things we talk about when we talk about this grandma usability meme. So she's a grandmother with macular degeneration, which means basically her eyes are failing as she gets older, like pretty much everyone's eyes do as they get older, to varying degrees. She's 74 years old. She lives in an apartment. These are actually from the book, and it's available. I have references at the end. So she lives in an apartment near her daughter so she can see her grandkids. She graduated from business college. She's a retired bookkeeper who was actually working during the transition to computers. So she's not a complete novice. She's not completely dumb. She's not that silly grandmother staring at the computer screen making a funny face that we saw a minute ago. She has an older computer at home. She uses it for email and looking at pictures and reading articles. This is a real usability person, still a cartoon, still not an actual person, but based in real needs. And I think ultimately this is the thing that we believe we're doing when we're focusing on that earlier cartoon grandmother, but it's something that I think we probably aren't doing in actuality, and that's where I want to get to today. So this is an example from the book also, and I put this quote in here for how perfectly it matches that poster, but in a much more meaningful way. So just to read the whole thing. My granddaughter set up a place where she can put up pictures and notes for me. I was excited, but it took me 3 tries and a phone call to get me connected. I thought I filled in all the answers correctly, but the same questions kept appearing. I'm sure that the program was trying to tell me what to do, but I couldn't understand what the screen was saying. Now, that's exactly how a person in that situation would describe that, but that's her literally saying, I don't understand it, but she's not making a silly face at the computer because she's not smart. This is actually a totally different experience, and this is a totally different way of approaching the exact same needs that we thought we were doing with the earlier cartoon grandmother. And so ultimately, for me, my version of it is, this isn't about making simple things for simple people. It's about making things work for real people with real needs. It's about caring. This is my son. Just a couple days, actually, before I left. So I mostly just threw that in there so I could put that picture on there. Didn't really have anything to talk about on that slide. Ultimately, what I'm talking about, though, is empathy. we've talked about empathy a lot. We use empathy a lot in our work. We supposedly use empathy a lot in our work in other places. And that's really what I want to talk about today. We all know content strategy loves empathy. It's really been a big part of our work in the last couple years. It's been a big part of the conference scene in the last couple years. Whitney Hess, a great usability consultant, is one of the first people I really heard pushing this and beating the empathy drum. And then over the course of the last few years, we've just seen more and more of it at presentations, at big conferences. There's a hashtag at Confab based around feelings because of empathy and because of the number of empathy talks. If you Google content strategy and empathy right now, you'll get about 2 million hits. So just brace yourselves for the work if you go to do research on that. But did you know there's actually 2 kinds of empathy? If you go in and you do the research on this and you read the definitions of it, there's 2 different types. There's cognitive empathy and there's affective empathy. And I want to talk about those 2 and really the way that we're doing one and not the other a lot of times, in ways that we can use them both together to make our work better. So I'll start with affective empathy. This is what we talk about, or what we think about most times when we talk about empathy. This is also called emotional empathy. This is actually the part that's based in feelings. And the real definition that I'm using is it's the capacity to understand and respond appropriately to another person's needs and experiences. That's what we're talking about when we have that poster of grandma up there. That's what we talk about when we have personas. If any of you got to see Hillary Marsh's talk earlier today, she used empathy personas as an actual process that they used, and it's something worth looking into, because those are based in much more real, much more useful information, and that's what we're getting at today. But I think that's really what this is about. This is part of a persona, but it's not the whole persona. This isn't enough to make it useful. But at a basic level, this is where we have to start with empathy. And we start by asking ourselves questions. Will grandma understand it? Is it understandable? And I think ultimately this is what we talk about when we talk about, are we using the right words? Are we calling things the right name? Are we using things in a way that makes sense to this person that is our audience, whether it's a grandma, whether it's a small business owner, whether it's the CMO of Coca-Cola? Are we using these things in a way that actually is understandable to them? At Facebook, the content strategy team, this is like step number 1, the groundwork of what we do. These are our content principles. We define our voice as simple, straightforward, and human. And to make those a little more tactical, these are our content principles, which is to keep it simple, use plain language, and be concise. Get to the point, clearly provide enough information to help people actually make the right decision. And then lastly, talk like a person. And we define that as actually talking to the people like they're your neighbor. So it's not quite the way I would talk to my best friend. It's not the way I would talk to my grandmother. It's not the way I would talk to a potential client. It's somewhere in between. It's friendly, but it's not too friendly. It's not too playful. Very similar to the way I'm going to talk to you today, minus the giant bullshit slide probably. But other than that part, pretty much the same voice. And this is really one of the things that we focus on a lot in our work. As a content strategist, I think one of the interesting things that I thought of this morning during Margot's presentation about defining what content strategy means for us and what we're doing when we talk about content strategy, the one thing that actually wasn't in those definitions is really a big part of what I do, which is the tactical day-to-day of interaction design and UX with designers. We don't have UX designers at Facebook. We have product designers and we have content strategists, and together we form the UX and the experience. But if you take a step back, while we're doing that tactical stuff, we're doing the exact same work everyone else is, which is that big picture of defining the voice, defining the brand, defining who we are and what we sound like. So it's an interesting mix for me of very technical, little tactical things in addition to this same broad content strategy picture that we talk about. And also, to go back, the reason I have my backpack is we have some nice little notebooks that have those content principles in there. I have maybe 30 or so because I had to bring them in my suitcase, but I'll dump them out on stage after the talk, so I can bribe you guys for good reviews. The next question we ask is it relevant? Is this something that's actually at the right time? Is it the right content to the right person at the right time? This is really basically step number 2 in content strategy. It's what we do in all of our work, in marketing and in interaction. And so in my previous life at a company called Volusion, which is an e-commerce platform, one of the projects I took on was rebuilding the support site. So if you would guess, the majority of people that visit a support site are current customers looking for help for a specific thing, trying to answer a specific tactical question. How do I set up this type of product? How do I set up my VAT tax if I'm selling things in Europe? How do I do all of these little specific things that are very hard to do on an individual basis? That's what we assumed also. We were wrong. That is part of the audience. We actually found there was three major types of visitors to this support site. There was the people that were just trying to answer one question and get it done. There were also the people that were brand new store owners who had no idea how to set something up, had no idea what the first step was. They landed on this interface that didn't really have a lot of guidance and didn't really have a lot of help in there, and they didn't even know where to start. It wasn't that they were dumb. It wasn't that they didn't understand business. They were legitimate, successful salespeople and business owners, but they didn't know how to set up this thing the way we built it. And so the third audience was actually potential customers. They were people who weren't paying us money at all, but they were interested in it. And we weren't providing enough technical information on the marketing site, so they were coming to the support site to see how the thing actually works. So when we rebuilt this, we tried to serve all three of those audiences. We tried to make it relevant for everyone who came here. So giant search box at the top, done. If you know what you're looking for, if you have any idea what it is you're trying to find, you should be able to find it there. All questions answered. If you don't know what you're looking for, if you don't even know what to search for, and you're a new business owner, well, here's a getting started thing. Bright, big colors right there at the first thing below the search box. Getting started, e-commerce 101. And so then here's your easy setup guide, how to use the knowledge base, because even that's complicated at this point because there's so much stuff in there. How to understand the way your different accounts work, and then the going live checklist, which is a thing you could print out, or an interactive version where you can just go through and say, these are the steps I need to take from day one to I launch and start selling things. The good thing about this is also exactly tailored to the people who don't have an account yet but are interested. If I'm interested in, well, should I buy this one or should I buy Shopify? Should I do this or should I do this? I come here and I see, oh, wow, look how easy it is to set up. It's only 12 steps until I'm done. Here's all the stuff I need to know. Here's all this great support, and I can find everything I need when I get there. This actually ended up being a great sales channel as well. And it was all based on relevance. The other thing that's not in this screenshot is down below. We actually had just popular topics, popular questions, FAQs for the most part, but they were curated in a way that they were also relevant. Either they were things that were happening at the time, they were about updates or changes, there were seasonal questions about paying your taxes or about doing discounts during the Thanksgiving season or whatever it was. We could actually make that relevant based on whatever thing we needed below there. So there was actually multiple ways for us to reach all the right audience there. And is it usable is the third question that we will ask in our basic approach to empathy, to affective empathy, which is really, can they do the thing they're trying to do? Can they get this done based on the content we've provided or on the thing that we've built? Can they actually achieve their goals based on this? So here's the first Facebook work reference. The first thing I worked on when I got on the ads interfaces was targeting, or finding your audience on the ad. Targeting is not what we call it necessarily, it's what the industry calls it as a whole. But if I wanted to reach people who are interested in baseball, I had three potential ways of doing that. We had a thing called broad categories, we had a thing called keywords, and we had a thing called precise interests. The keywords and precise interests were actually even in the same dropdown for some reason. So if I search for baseball in any of these places, I have these three potential ways of finding someone who's, in theory, interested in baseball. I have no idea which one is better for me. I have no idea who's in what. I have no idea how to actually make any of these things work if I'm an advertiser. Do I pick all of them? Do I pick one? Do I create 3 separate ads, one with each? I have no idea what to do. And so more than just a content project, what we did here is we actually went back and we rebuilt them all. These are basically, this is called shipping an org chart. This is called 3 different teams built 3 different things and we put them all in the UI. So we went back and we rebuilt those and we got rid of some things, we added some things. There's all kinds of technical programming magic that happens in there that I have no idea what's involved, but we basically simplified it down to one single drop-down of interests, one single choice for baseball, one combination of I have a soundtrack for the rest of this. I will not dance for you. Yeah. One simple drop-down of just one way to reach baseball. And the good thing about this is ideally what this does is it helps us make our product work better. It helps advertisers find the right people. And ultimately, if we all do our jobs right, it helps all of us see more relevant ads in our work because we're actually seeing things that are based on what we are actually interested in. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. this leads me, as I close out the part on affective empathy, there's this great quote from Sarah Wachter-Becher in an article I also have linked at the end. It says, "It's easy to write off empathy for our clients and colleagues as just a way to go soft, a way to talk about feelings instead of doing the work, and to keep things vague and to avoid the complexities of information interaction. I get why people hate this. It's squishy, squirmy, and vague. Too bad we need it." What she's really talking about here is the people who only think empathy is about feelings and is about caring for someone and about just putting that poster on the wall and thinking about them when you're doing your work. I don't know about you, but those examples that I just showed you are not sexy. They're not squishy feelings things. I didn't spend 3 weeks in spreadsheets and taxonomies on that targeting thing for my feelings. I did it because it was actually real work of getting things done for real people. And so I think that's really where I think we have a disconnect in what we talk about when we talk about empathy, is that we're talking about real work and we're talking about real things. But yes, there is a big part of that. I don't know a lot of content strategists, but all the ones I know and all the good ones I know are very emotional people, are very connected, have a lot of feelings, and that comes from caring about these things. But it's not all squishy. And so that does lead me into the other type of empathy, and I think this is where we really have a chance to grow and to really redefine what we talk about when we talk about empathy, which is moving away from the squishy feeling stuff and moving into what is called cognitive empathy. There's not a really great definition for this. There's really, if you get into textbooks and you get into Wikipedia articles and websites about this, and you spend a few weeks on it, you'll find that no one really defines it in the same way. As I'm defining it today for this specific task at hand, for this audience, to make it relevant to you, is taking the perspective of another, not just knowing how they feel, not just understanding their experience, but actually taking that perspective, internalizing it, adding it to your own perspective, and using it as a lens to look at your work in a different way. It's not just, do I want her to be successful, but as I'm looking at her using this product, how do I think about what I'm doing in a way to make it better for her? And I think to do that, another great quote, actually, before I jump in, from Jeremy Rifkin's new book, The Empathic Civilization. This quote really struck me when I was doing research. Empathy is essentially an emotional state with a cognitive component. And right now, we've talked about the emotional state for you as the writer and the builder, and also for your audience and your customer. And now the cognitive component is where you really can make things matter and build something that people will care about. So I think this is how we move from will grandma understand it to will grandma care. How do we get here to making something that is actually valuable to her and meaningful to her? And so we'll ask ourselves new questions now. The first question I'll say is it helpful? This is actually where you go from, is this thing usable, to is this thing useful? Is this something she can use, to is this something she is able to use in a way to do her job better? And so another very unsexy, very uncool project that I have worked on that I think is really awesome and cool is our pixel helper. So for the European audience, I'm guessing this is probably not quite as relevant because I know pixels are a weird thing for a lot of you guys, but in terms of privacy, what this actually is a lot of websites, Google and other places have these things. It's a little piece of code you put on your website that then lets you see where people have gone on the website and what people have done. And then they also have ones that are called remarketing pixels, which is when you visit a website, if I go to Amazon and look for a pair of shoes, those pairs of shoes show up everywhere that Google has ads and also on Facebook ads based on this piece of code that people have put on their website. Well, so pixels are inherently really hard to deal with because you're using someone else's code on your website, connecting it to another platform that is then using that to use it for ads. And there's all these different pieces, different elements, and you really don't have control of very much of it at all. And so it's really hard for developers especially. This is something that we're like the guys that are down working in the dirt on your website are dealing with on a daily basis. And it's something that's really hard to deal with. So for the Facebook pixels, one of our engineers actually built this, and then a designer and I took a hold of it and tried to make it work better. You can get this as a Chrome plugin. It's a little piece that you put in your on your website or in your browser. And when you go to your website, this little icon up in the top will show you a little green or a red number based on do you have a pixel on there and is it working? And then actually, the thing I'm really excited about here is that it's not just is it working or is it not working. We have this kind of middle ground that we call suggestions, which is, well, it's technically working. Technically, there's nothing wrong, but here's some ways that you can make it work better. Here's some ways that you can do things differently. Here are some things that you should think about. Because 3,087 milliseconds is way too long for that thing to load, which is actually 3 seconds, but I apparently have to tell people how many milliseconds and first. But giving people some ideas here, and then all of these will link to articles that will actually tell them ways that they could potentially improve that. So it's not just yes or no, it's not just good or bad, but it's providing guidance, it's providing help, it's providing information for the people who use our products every day. And it's something that I think really shows taking their perspective as a developer. It's interesting to me that an engineer built this because he knows what it's really like to deal with this. A marketing manager would probably never think to build one of these things. I never thought to build one of these things. But once we started dealing with it, it made perfect sense. We can also ask ourselves, is this meaningful? Is this something that actually has meaning, has real value for you as a user, as a reader, as an audience member? And this is actually one of my favorite examples. I've been talking a lot about content strategy. I've been talking a lot about interaction design and usability. This is actually one of the points I will have on content marketing. I don't do any content marketing anymore. I have done plenty of that in my past lives. But we all get a lot of emails. We get a lot of email newsletters. I get a ton. I'm trying to make a habit now of unsubscribing from the ones that I don't read. And one of the ones that I don't read was Rosenfeld Media's newsletter, which is actually I'm embarrassed by because I love their books. I read their books, but I never read the newsletter. And so the other day, while I was clicking through, thinking about whether I would unsubscribe, I see this subject line: "The newsletter is dead. Long live communication," from Lou Rosenfeld. And I put this in here. This is the opening of the newsletter, word for word. I'm writing you because you've subscribed to Rosenfeld Media's newsletter, the Rosenfeld Review. Couldn't even have told you it was called the Rosenfeld Review. First, thank you for being willing to share a little bit of your attention with us. Newsletters, for the most part, suck. So I'm grateful that you subscribed. And then he goes on. This is what blew me away. He says, you know what? Ours is one of those ones that sucked. And he even says, I honestly doubt that it's made an impact on anyone's life. So we're done. We rarely send these things out as they are. And then he goes on to say, they're as excruciatingly boring to write as they are to read. And it's amazing. And it really struck me, there's more to this. I wish I didn't have a way to link to this newsletter because it was an actual email that came in. But I actually emailed Lou Rosenfeld back about this because it was such an awesome newsletter to receive. And he goes on to say basically he is going to still send these things out, but it won't be called the Rosenfeld Review anymore. It won't be your standard industry newsletter. It'll be an email from him written in this voice about the things he cares about, that he hopes we care about. And then he asks for people to send emails back and respond about the things that they would like to hear him talk about. Basically saying, if I'm going to write this thing, I'm going to write about something I want to write about, and if you want to read it, great. If you don't, fine. Which is really what everyone should go for. It's providing real meaning and real value for the people who are reading it now. Does this necessarily help his business? This email specifically? Maybe not. Did he probably get a lot of people unsubscribing after he sent this out? Probably. Did I open the next one and read it from start to finish immediately when it showed up in my inbox? Yes. And I've read all of them since then, and they've been great. I'm a big fan of Lou's anyway, so it's nice to see his voice in here and not your standard newsletter that I didn't read. And I think what really comes out of this one for me is it leads into the next point of value. Is it valuable to the person reading it, but also is it valuable to the person creating it? Are you actually doing work that is providing real meaning for yourself and for the person, ideally for both of you? And if you're doing something that you really don't care about and you really don't feel good about, your audience probably isn't going to care about it or feel good about it either. So that's probably a good signal that maybe you should be focusing on something else. Because if you're building something and you're writing about it, and you're writing about something that sounds boring and terrible and you don't want to deal with it, then your audience probably thinks it's boring and terrible and they don't want to deal with it either. And then you should probably think about what in your product you're writing about, because that might need work. So I think this is one of the hardest questions to actually have a real answer for. Sorry, this is so pixelated. This is a massive projector. At this point, you guys have probably seen this in an article if you haven't seen this actual thing. This is the privacy dinosaur from Facebook. And he'll pop up. It says, sorry to interrupt. You haven't changed who can see your post recently, so we just wanted to make sure you're sharing a post with the right audience. Your current setting is to public, but you can change this whenever you post. And made the buttons bigger to tell you how to change it. Also links to an article to tell you all about how that works. Now, assuming, as everyone does, that Facebook is evil and terrible and wants you to share more information, you would think we'd be doing this, or not we, I didn't build this. You would think they would be doing this to get you to post publicly. you'd actually be wrong, because this pops up for people who have posted publicly for a long time without changing it. And then what happens is our privacy team actually realized that most of these people didn't realize they were doing this publicly and didn't realize that they had a way to change it that easily. And so this popped up to remind them that they could and show them how, led to people sharing less stuff publicly, led to an actual narrowing of the audience, but ultimately led to people doing what they wanted, which helps us make everyone happier, helps make them happier, which is what we want. So, I think one of the articles, Slate had an article about this that came out like the next day, and they changed the headline after a day, but it was something along the lines of, Facebook is not evil like we all think. I forget how they actually put it, but it was, I guess that's our version of positive press. I think this is a great example of doing something that provides value for the end user, for the person who actually uses your thing. Maybe even if it doesn't provide immediate value for you, maybe if it doesn't do exactly what you would think would be best for your company, ultimately this is better for us because it's valuable for the people who use it. This actually brings me to another great quote. Carl Rogers is apparently one of the early psychologists that did research and writing about empathy in the 50s. And at the end of one of his long descriptions of empathy, he has this great note about it. It means frequently checking in with the person as to the accuracy of your sensings. When you take that person's perspective and you try to think about things in their way, go back and find out if you're right. Go back and ask them if, hey, is this, I made this thing because I feel like this is gonna help you and this is how I understand your need. Are we right? Is this what you actually want? Being guided by the responses you receive. Another thing that we do a lot, we have lots of feedback channels, obviously a massive social platform with 1 billion users or whatever we have at this point, lots of people willing to tell us how to do things, and we actually listen to a lot of that and respond to a lot of that internally and externally. Like internally, we even have, ways that people that don't work on our teams are using our products. We encourage everyone at Facebook to run Facebook ads, not to get more ads out there, but so they can see what it's like to build them and to use them and come back and tell us how the interfaces need to be worked on. Most of the fixes I do on a daily basis come from things my coworkers have pointed out to me that don't work right. And so this is a great way of following that and actually listening to your users, your audience, your customers. So I think my main point here, if I haven't made it obvious enough, is we need both kinds of empathy. We need the feelings, we need the squishy, loving, caring stuff for the people we're building things for, but we also need to think about it in a way that we can provide real value, real helpful information, and meaningful interactions with them. We need to move from, is this understandable, to is this helpful? You have to start with understandable. It has to be written in a way that Grandma can read it, in a way that CMO of Coke can read it, in a way that whoever can use this, but ultimately it has to help them do what they want to do at the end. If they're reading stuff that's perfectly clear about something that doesn't help them, then I'm still wasting their time, even if they understand every word of it. Is it relevant? We move from that to, is it meaningful? It has to start off being relevant. Yeah, I have to show you the right thing at the right time. I have to show you what you need to see at that time. But then it actually has to be meaningful to you when you get it. If me just saying like, hey, you just clicked on this, do you want to buy this other thing, doesn't actually provide real meaning for you, then yeah, it's relevant to me that I wanted to show it to you at that time, but it's probably not going to be meaningful to the audience, and it's not going to be meaningful to me because it's ultimately not going to perform. And lastly, we have to move from, is this thing usable, to is this thing valuable? Is this something that they can use? Great. Then let's take a step. Is this something they should use? Is this something they will use? If I spend hours and hours writing this interactive guide on how to create ads, and then I send it to you, and you don't actually use it, and it doesn't actually help you, then it's been a waste of my time and your time to do it. And so, I think it's really a matter of combining the empathy, the emotion, the affective side of it with the cognitive side is where we actually get to saying, moving from will grandma understand it to will grandma care. And we're going to go from the basic first step of, yeah, let's make sure she can use this thing. And then let's really focus on, is this something that provides real value and real meaning for them on a daily basis? And lastly, a little bit of advice from me. If you have the option, you should call your grandmother. She wants to hear from you. So that's all I've got. Thank you.